Hey everyone, and welcome to GFC, the latest podcast on German football culture. My name is Rick, speaking to you from sunny California, and here I am with my good friend Alex, who's tuning in from Germany. We're two lifelong football fans, and we've known each other for nearly 20 years now. This podcast is our way of sharing passion for German football with you.
That's right. Hi everyone out there. My name is Alex, and while I'm still here in Germany, Rick and I have always kept in touch, especially when it comes to football, of course, which is a passion that we both share. And, we've had countless conversations about the game, and over time we realized that there's just so much about German football that isn't well known outside of Europe, especially in the US. And this podcast is our way of how we want to change this situation.
Yeah, German football has this incredible depth with 3 professional leagues full of clubs that have long histories, passionate fan bases, and a unique culture. Most people might know the Bundesliga, but the Bundesliga 2 and the third league are just as fascinating. We believe these leagues have stories and moments that deserve more attention internationally.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is we're not just going to cover the scores and fixtures, although don't worry, we'll definitely talk about the latest results. But we also want to dive into the cultural elements that make German football so special, the traditions, the rivalries, the fan culture. There's so much to explore and discuss aside from the scores and the Bundesliga table.
Yeah, and for this reason, our episodes consist of 4 categories, covering highlights of the past week and unmatched moments, fan activities of the week and fantastic takeaways, as well as arising issues within the league or in and between clubs in clubble trouble. And lastly, we always round up our episodes looking at worthy matchups ahead in our final category, Schedule Ballers.
And with that, thanks for tuning into this episode. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, Alex, what an action-packed football week we have behind us. Again, a lot of stuff going on, both on and off the pitch. So let's start unpacking it. First off, during the week, we had Leverkusen and Stuttgart's, playing their first-round matches for the German Cup, where both teams made it into the second round. We also had Julian Nagelsmann announcing the national team nomination for the upcoming international friendlies next week. And we saw a few surprises there. Obviously, Toni Kroos, Thomas Müller, Manuel Neuer, and Ilkay Gündogan all said goodbye to the DFB. And some big names were left out of the squad as well. First and foremost, Antonio Rüdiger and Leroy Sané are going to take a pause. But also Serge Gnabry was not nominated again. Instead, Nagelsmann nominated one new player, which is Angelo Stiller from VfB Stuttgart. This is a change that was kind of expected because he always spoke of Angelo Stiller even prior to the Euro Cup in highest regards. So he added this young defensive mid player who is in his early 20s. Since he had a great season at Stuttgart last year, and he's definitely part of Nagelsmann's future plan on the number 6 position. Pascal Groß and Robert Andrich, who will probably fill those roles immediately after Toni Kroos' departure, are also not the youngest. I could see a defensive mid made up with Bayern's Alexander Pavlovic and Angelo Stiller past the 2026 World Cup. Kimmich is listed on the roster, obviously, as well, but he is under the defensive players listed, so I assume that Nagelsmann will continue to play him as a right back and won't move him back into the midfield. But I'm curious, Alex, what's your take on this national team nomination, and what do you see ahead of these friendly matchups?
Yeah, thanks, Hendrik. Look, obviously, Kimmich, I think, has finally returned to the right back position, and I very much believe that he's going to stay there for the foreseeable future. He's also going to turn 30 next year, I believe. He probably has a few more years ahead of himself at the highest level, but I think for some reason, I have that feeling that his time in the defensive mid is over. He had a good couple of years playing in this position, both at Bayern Munich and the national team. But we see that he's just a much more valuable player on the right back position. The midfield, so the number 6 as well as the number 8, they kind of sort of play next to each other. Or so you had in these positions, you had players who could potentially fill both positions, or they were able to switch between the two positions with one of the midfielders pushing a little further up and the other player falling further down. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Pavlovic and Stiller are gonna play together. Because as you said, I think it could be a very interesting duo going forward in the German national team. But of course, these are two positions that very much determine the success of the entire squad going forward. You may remember the World Cup in Qatar in 22, even the Euros the year before, the Corona tournament. Even though we had on the roster big names, with back then it was still Kroos, then Gündogan took on the role in the World Cup in 2022. But for some reason, they weren't really able to get the most out of their talents in that particular role. So, and that had an impact on the entire squad. Anyway, long story short, I have to agree, Angelo Stiller is a very, very interesting nominee. I could well imagine that he's going to fit right into that team. But we will see. We have 2 friendlies coming up. And I'm very keen to see how they perform together.
Yeah, I do share your thoughts on that. Right, the term that was defined last year, I think mainly through Thomas Tuchel, was this holding 6. So basically, the number 6, a role that holds its positions and just distributes the ball throughout the field. So Toni Kroos was the prime example during the Euro this year, and how he was staying, on the same line or even sometimes behind the defensive line, just distributing the balls and making sure that the offensive mid players, the wingers, can really shine. So that was missing in Qatar. I agree with you. Funny enough, you mentioned Kimmich in Bayern. Now he's back on that number 6 position where Tuchel and others before didn't really see him anymore. I think it would be best in the interest of building a strong nationals team for the 2026 World Cup in the US to just have consistency on the right back position. And I want Nagelsmann to continue with this clear role definition as he did it in the Euro 2024. So they only have a few games, right? And they need time to get used to each other, to really study the right system. So I hope he stays consistent on those roles. But yeah, with that being said, let's move on to a couple of more things that happened this week. One person that a lot of folks in the US might know just turned 60 years last week, which is Jürgen Klinsmann. He was a former world-class striker, World Cup winner 1990 with Germany, and he won the European Championship with Germany in 1996. He coached both Germany and the United States as a head coach, took Germany to the home World Cup in 2006 and the United States to the World Cup in Brazil 2014. And Klinsmann has been living in California since 1998. His wife is American. I think his son, who is a goalie, did his entire soccer training from childhood on the fields of Southern California. But yeah, Jürgen Klinsmann is still very respected in the international football community, and of course as a football expert here in the United States. So I would assume he will play a big role on Germany's TV broadcast of the 2026 World Cup in North America. At least it would make a lot of sense to have someone like that on the expert team, given all his expertise living and following football in the US. So happy birthday, Jürgen Klinsmann, and I hope you will be, part of this beautiful game for a long time, and we will see you somewhere again.
Definitely. Happy birthday, legend. I'm also, I'm a bit of a little bit of a Tottenham supporter. But at least if I had to pick a team in the Prem, it would be Tottenham. And he's had a very successful time there too. Played a number of years in England. So, also happy birthday, Jürgen, from my side.
Very good. Yeah, and then we had Heidenheim this week qualify for the Europa Conference League. First time they're going to make an appearance in Europe in their club's history. They just got promoted, I shall say, from the second Bundesliga to Bundesliga 1 last season, where they played an incredible season, ended up coming in on, I believe, 7th. Yeah, and then now had to play the qualifier against Häcken from Sweden, and won both games away and at home, and are now going to play their first home game against Chelsea London. What a draw for them. So it's going to be an exciting first round and a great European Cup night in Heidenheim there. And while we're at that topic, I want to point out one player on Heidenheim that I think Germans can be very excited about. Paul Wanner is his name. He is on loan from Bayern Munich. He was loaned out a season to Elversberg last year, played a very good second Bundesliga season with them, now got traded to Heidenheim. He's 18 years old, and he already scored 2 Bundesliga goals just earlier today in their game against Augsburg, which Heidenheim won 4-0. He had a goal and an assist. He also had a goal and an assist in this home game against Häcken. So he's ever present in their offense, and I think we're going to see a great season from him, potentially allowing him to return to Bayern Munich next year. And I think this is going to be one of these great German talents to look forward to, which means, Alex, we don't have to think so negatively about the Germany team's future. I think we have enough good players that a lot of folks don't have on the radar yet that will come through. I think this last season shows it with Stuttgart bringing up so many good players and filling up the national team with their talent. And now you have a guy like Wanner and a few others just waiting for their moment to shine. And so I'm actually very positive about Germany's future.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think bunch of talented young folks getting their chance to make a change and an impact at Bundesliga levels. And now with the fixture against Chelsea, I mean, for a club like Heidenheim, that's unbelievable. We've both been there, I believe. It's a really small town somewhere nearby Stuttgart. They've done very solid work over the years. Of course, it's a small team, but eventually they qualified for the Conference League, and they certainly deserve to be there. So I'm looking forward to watching them compete at this level.
And we had the Champions League draw this week, and we will be seeing a new league modus for the first time this season. 5 German teams are qualified. Last season, Bundesliga champion Bayer Leverkusen, of course, Bayern Munich, as usual, Borussia Dortmund, as usual, Red Bull Leipzig, we have to say, as usual as well. And then VfB Stuttgart, the surprise team of last season, ending up in second place in the Bundesliga, which are qualified for the first time since 2009. So yeah, Alex, what do you think about this new mode, and what do you know about it? I know a lot of people got confused how it's actually going to work, but I'm curious, what is your take on that new Champions League format?
Yeah, interesting topic. I mean, look, you know me well enough. I'm, in that sense, sometimes a little bit of a conservative in a way. I'm not exactly a friend of changes just for the sake of making changes. And this is how I view the new Champions League mode. So, I mean, some of you guys out there might have heard about it, but the previous group stage of the Champions League is no longer a group stage. It is now a league. So you actually have all the teams that have qualified for the main tournament of the Champions League have now been put together in one gigantic table. And they've also increased the number of the teams. So that by default already increases the number of games. Having said all of that, the way it works today is that each team gets assigned 8 opponents against who they will play their formerly group stage, now league stage, we call it league stage matches, 4 home games and 4 away games. You still have like these pots from which the teams are drawn. Like you have pot number 1, where you have typically the the best teams, or with the teams with the best statistics in the Champions League and the national champions. Then you have pot number 2, 3, and 4, which are defined, of course, by the UEFA coefficient. So long story short, essentially all teams now compete in one table, but they don't play against all the teams on the table, which is already by default a bit confusing. But eventually they're just trying to collect enough points to somehow qualify for the round of 16, which then continues to be the traditional KO knockout type of structure. So yeah, also the draw itself was kind of interesting to see. You might have seen Cristiano Ronaldo pushing a button, and then magically all the fixtures appeared on the screen. So there was no longer the traditional draw where you can actually see people opening these balls with the name of the teams inside. And then instead it was some sort of an algorithm. God knows how that algorithm worked. Apparently it did. It spit out the right result, or proper result. But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is, and a lot more prominent people other than me have said this before, UEFA needs to really pay a bit of attention to how many games they arrange throughout the season. I think it's getting a little out of hand. I feel that this entire new Champions League modus just aims at having more teams and even more games. And they did that to the Europa League as well. Per my understanding, they're now following a similar structure. More teams, more games, and just more money in the pot at the end of the day. So, yeah, coming back to what I said before, I just thought the group stage had its own, very well established structure. And, well, let's see. I'm open to it. I'm going to watch the games anyway. I know myself well enough, but whether I'm a big friend or a big fan of this new modus remains to be seen. I think we need to discuss that after the league stage is over. Let's see who's going to qualify. It might be interesting, but again, I just think in some way it's a change for the sake of making a change. I don't know. Very curious to also hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, first of all, I agree with you. We will definitely be watching, and we will see if we get used to it. I understand the intention from the UEFA behind it. They wanted to avoid that Super League that, a few clubs and owners, especially from the Premier League and from the Spanish La Liga, had talked about and targeted. So I think, from that side, we absolutely should stick with our European sports model. I love it that small clubs, if they perform well, if they have a great team performance over the previous seasons, that they deserve a spot in the Champions League as well, or in European competitions in general. So I don't believe in closed shops with big major clubs. I believe in the competitiveness of our European sports system. So for that reason, it's good to make that attempt to allow clubs to make more money with this new mode and to avoid the Super League. For small clubs, for example, I learned about this this week as well. It means $18 million just qualifying for the Champions League. And even though we'll probably see the same 8 top teams in the round of 16 as usual, it's still nice for these smaller clubs to appear on such a big international stage. But I also agree with you that it's getting a little bit too much, and I would include the FIFA in this discussion as well, with their Club World Cup and the inflated Club World Cup, which will basically take all summer in the US this year. It's getting too much overall, and I don't know if people will get tired of so much soccer at the end of the day. And you see it in the squads now, what Chelsea, for example, did in terms of transfers this year, and how many players they carry on their roster. In the Bundesliga as well, you have 5 subs nowadays, which I don't know if I'm necessarily against it. It brings a nice pepper into the game if you can swap 5 players, but all of that was already done knowing that they have to play more matches over the course of the season. There's more on the body for each player. So, yeah, you should also be concerned about the health of players with so many games. And even though I love football, I don't know if I'm going to be sitting week after week, 7 days in front of the TV to make sure I stay current with all the matches.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the big risk, right? You can in some way compare it with a gigantic bubble. And we've seen it we've seen it in the real estate market in the US a couple of years ago. If you keep blowing up the bubble just because it works at the moment, doesn't mean that it will work forever. But keep inflating it year after year. And you mentioned the Club World Cup. These two new modi happen at the same year. And then you have also a bigger World Cup coming up, 2026, with more teams than before. So yeah, that's just, again, I might be a bit conservative in that sense, but that's just my concern, that we keep blowing up the bubble until it bursts and people will start losing interest.
Certainly. And as you can see, you guys out there, there's a lot of the things that we can discuss week after week here. Great topics. And but we shouldn't forget to add all the action of all three German top leagues of this weekend. So I would suggest at this point, we close that topic around the Champions League and actually move on to our first category, which is unmatched moments. Unmatched moments of the beautiful game. Yeah, Alex, I'm actually going to kick it off this week with my unmatched moment. I was really excited about Saturday and the games in Bundesliga 2. We mentioned this to you folks before. We're both big fans of Bundesliga 2 because there's so many big clubs with a lot of tradition and a lot of fans. And yeah, this week was just action-packed with teams scoring 4 goals or more in each Saturday game. So we had FC Nürnberg against Magdeburg. Magdeburg, took a 4-0 away from this game. FC Nürnberg, as some of you might know, coached by a German World Cup winner Miroslav Klose. She had a so-so start in the season, so we'll be watching and see where he's going to take that team. Certainly, they aspire to be, under the top, let's say, 6 teams in the second Bundesliga as well. Another great game was Hamburg against Münster, 4-1 for Hamburg. So Hamburg back on track. I do think under Steffen Baumgart as a coach, we're going to see them competing this year until the last second to promote to the Bundesliga. Usually, first half of the season is always good for Hamburg. Second half is where they start losing points. And usually they end up on 4th. So, but this year, I'm positive that we're going to see them under the top 3 finishing the season. And then another game, Elversberg-Darmstadt. Elversberg, one of the smallest teams in the Bundesliga 2, promoted last year from the 3rd league, then had a great season, really never had anything to do with the relegation fight to go back down to Bundesliga 3 or the 3rd league, I shall say. And they pulled up a 4-0 win against Darmstadt at home, which shifted Darmstadt further into crisis. And we just got the news this morning that Darmstadt's coach Lieberknecht retired after this massive loss. You have to say 4-0 in Elversberg is really a big loss, as a team just coming down from the Bundesliga. So Darmstadt and Lieberknecht will separate, and we will see a fresh start in Darmstadt after, I believe, almost 3 years of Lieberknecht. So we'll stay on that as well. And last but not least, we had an incredible night game, really. It was live on German TV. It was also live on ESPN Plus. Kaiserslautern against Hertha Berlin. We discussed this matchup a little bit in our scheduled ballers category last week, and the match certainly held up the promise of being a good match. It just shows again, all these matchups just show again what a great league Bundesliga 2 is. Every team has a chance to compete. There aren't really any real favorites anymore. Week after week, we see surprises, and every team has to be at their best to pull up a win in Bundesliga 2. So 32 goals in 9 matches this weekend. That's more than 3.5 goals on average per game in Bundesliga 2. It's just simply brilliant for viewers, and I hope, again, because I have a lot of love for the clubs in Bundesliga 2, that also American television will pick up a little bit more action of Bundesliga 2, knowing that this is just such a great league to watch. I see a lot of teams that can potentially compete for promotion into Bundesliga 1. So, yeah, we'll make sure we update you on a regular basis on the action there. And just going back real quick to the Saturday evening game between Kaiserslautern and Hertha. Alex, I know you were in the stadium, so you got to share a first-hand experience and let us know how it was to see such a crazy game live, and what your takeaways are.
Yes, indeed, Rick. I was there in the stadium in Kaiserslautern on Saturday night, and as you can probably hear, my voice has not yet fully recovered from it, which I believe may actually sound a little better for the sake of this podcast. So I guess I need to scream out my lungs every weekend now before recording this, for the sake of a better quality. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And the guys who have seen the match, it was, of course, a super exciting game. 7 goals in total, a bit chaotic at times. I mean, obviously, when both teams concede more than 3 goals, it also shows that the defense was not exactly stable as it should be. But yeah, both teams were attacking and pushing really hard for this win. So both of them could have even scored more goals. And there were 2 or 3 situations where just right before the end, Kaiserslautern had a chance to equalize yet again. After top striker Ragnar Ache was subbed in, he had 2 or 3 situations where he typically scores. Like I remember one header, I believe, after a corner or a free kick, where he just like towered on top of the entire Berlin defense, but missed the goal by a few inches. And literally with the last situation of the game, he got the ball and was able to like turn around, and while essentially falling to the ground, he hit the ball and it almost hit the top right corner of the goal. And after that, the referee ended the game, so everyone was a bit disappointed. But nonetheless, it was fantastic. And Berlin scored the first goal. Kaiserslautern managed to turn the game around. Then Berlin managed to turn the game around again. They went up 3-2. Kaiserslautern equalized, and eventually Berlin scored one more goal and took the 3 points away from the Futsal-Stadion. But yeah, aside from what happened on the pitch itself, also the situation on the stands was somewhat interesting, and I think we touched base on this last week already, because Kaiserslautern and Berlin have some sort of a rivalry, which actually goes back to a, let's say, triangular relationship with other clubs that are not directly involved in this fixture. But so Hertha Berlin and the fans of Karlsruhe, which is actually a regional rival of Kaiserslautern, have a long-lasting friendly relationships between the fans of both teams. So that already adds some spice to it. And on top of that, you have Karlsruhe having a friendship with the fans of Racing Strasbourg in the French, I believe they're in the second league now. Meanwhile, the fans of Kaiserslautern have a friendship with FC Metz, and now guess what? Metz and Strasbourg are regional rivals as well. So, long story short, a lot of heat on the pitch, a lot of heat on the stands, and all these rivalries aside, it's just those kind of matches that bring people together. Sold out stadium, prime kickoff time, few beers before the game with the boys, and then floodlights on and bloody off we go. It's just a whole different atmosphere. And that's exactly the reason why we all love this game so much. So anyway, I'm talking way too much. Needless to say, this is also my unmatched moment of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I just watched it on TV and it came, the atmosphere definitely swapped over. It came through the TV and you could totally see how great it must be there live in the stadium and watch this game. So definitely a highlight. And there were a few more highlights. So I would say we move on and dive a little bit deeper into what happened on the stands this week and fantastic takeaways. Fantastic takeaways. Highlights from the stands. It would probably be easy, Alex, to pick that Kaiserslautern Berlin game for the fantastic takeaway category as well. But I thought we want to give a comprehensive overview, and there's just so many great matchups through all three top leagues in Germany. So I actually picked Bundesliga 1, a match between Union Berlin or Union Berlin and FC St. Pauli, which are two very special clubs, and they met each other for the first time in Germany's top flight. Both clubs are deeply rooted in their communities. They are strongly represented by their members and especially the values of their members. Union Berlin is a very family-oriented club. So the Alte Försterei, their stadium there, it's really a family atmosphere that they want to create there. And you mentioned that a little bit in the Kaiserslautern against Berlin game, where in Kaiserslautern it's very similar, where people come together, the community comes together, you have a couple of beers, you stand there with your long-term buddies. So that's what Union Berlin really wants to keep as part of their identity. And even they qualified for the Champions League 2 seasons ago and had these incredible moments, at the Berlin Olympic Stadium against Real Madrid in front of over 70,000 visitors. They didn't play a very successful Bundesliga season last year. And you never heard any bad atmosphere, critiques at the players, because another value that they have is just like, be fair to your players. We go through good times and bad times together, and they're just incredibly happy where the club moved over the past 5 years. They've been a Bundesliga 2 team for the longest time, then build up a very solid management structure, promoted into Bundesliga 1, and now are playing there, I believe, for the 4th consecutive season. Right around COVID is when they made it up. And they're a stable Bundesliga contender now. So the fans said, you know what, last year we played Champions League, then I believe it was the last match day when it was actually decided that they're going to stay in Bundesliga 1 for this season. But the fans said, it doesn't matter. We're still here. We're happy. And even if we go down to Bundesliga 2 again, let's keep that special atmosphere. We don't have to reach for the stars now. We're happy what we have here. So just an incredible club, Union Berlin, and I'm happy to see them in the top flight this season again. Yeah, and it's also great to see St. Pauli back in Bundesliga 1, which is a smaller team from Hamburg, right, with their large community background in the alternative scene in Hamburg. It was always the establishment that was following the bigger team from Hamburg, HSV or Hamburger SV. And then, more of the worker class going to St. Pauli. And now the worker class club actually managed to be ahead of the big HSV and play in Bundesliga 1 while HSV is still competing for promotion this year again in Bundesliga 2. Also here, again, a lot of identification with the members, this working class attitude, a club that promotes the fight against racism and pro-inclusion, probably one of the most outspoken clubs worldwide around these topics. So it was just a unique matchup on this Friday night, and I really enjoyed watching that game. There was a small choreography that the fans of Union Berlin made starting the game. And it was just loud. And again, it had this floodlight atmosphere, primetime game. So that's definitely my fantastic moment. And again, great to see such teams competing on the highest level in Bundesliga 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the situation with Union Berlin and Hertha Berlin is maybe not exactly the same, but somewhat comparable. Hertha Berlin is by far the bigger club in Berlin, but yet it's Union who are able to keep themselves up there in the Bundesliga and compete at the big stage where Hertha desperately wants to return to, but for some reason, a variety of reasons, they don't manage to make it back and get promoted back to Bundesliga 1. Instead, Hertha Berlin and the big Hamburger SV are competing in Bundesliga 2. And I know we've said that many times before, but here we are again, part of the reason why all these different leagues are so interesting, with unique fixtures and big clubs with incredible histories. So yeah, great fan displays all across Germany on the stands again, in multiple stadiums this past weekend. I, for example, very much enjoyed the atmosphere in Bremen during their match versus Dortmund, where the fans of Werder Bremen actually honored Willy Lemke, who passed away a few weeks ago, with the choreography in the stadium. Maybe to add a bit of context here, Willy Lemke was, first and foremost, he was a politician for the German Social Democrats, but Lemke was also a former manager of the club, particularly during the golden era of the 1980s and early 1990s, when Werder Bremen was a very big name in European football. They won several titles during that time, including 2 Bundesliga championships, 3 national cups, and they also managed to snatch a European Cup during that time. And Lemke was also the manager or president who brought in the legendary head coach Otto Rehhagel to Bremen, with whom they celebrated many successes. And yes, you heard that right. That's exactly the same Otto Rehhagel who later on won another Bundesliga title with Kaiserslautern in 1998. And against all odds and to everyone's surprise, a European championship with Greece in 2004. Yeah, and during that same game, in fact, the Dortmund fans also had something to celebrate. They were, in fact, the first traveling fans who got to, so to speak, inaugurate the new visitor sector at the Weserstadion in Bremen, which is now a lot closer to the pitch and has a different layout than before, which actually allows the away fans to put on a more coordinated support. And we actually saw that already. Of course, Dortmund always brings with them a big crowd of fans. So yeah, they inaugurated the new sector with a nice pyrotechnic show, a bit of yellow and black smoke coming out of that section. So yeah, brilliant game, a brilliant performance on the stands. Yeah, what else? We saw as well the fans of Preußen Münster, and now we're actually returning back to Bundesliga 2. They've traveled to their away game in Hamburg, to the big Hamburg club, at least the one that by members, member count, biggest club. Münster traveled to Hamburg with over 8,000 fans, which is a huge number for a team that hasn't been in the second Bundesliga for over 30 years. They just got promoted last season. I mean, nevertheless, they lost that game with 4-1 in the end, as you mentioned earlier, but I'm sure that despite the result, it was just a super memorable trip for everyone. And it just shows that sometimes in German football culture, it's not the result that matters the most. Of course, we all want our clubs to be successful and eventually be on top of the table. But sometimes what counts the most is the support from the stands and just that sense, that incredible sense of belonging among the fans, which makes it, so beautiful in the end. But last but not least, and now we're also coming to my personal fantastic takeaway of the weekend, are the fans of VfB Stuttgart, also a club that I personally like very much. They organized their annual Karawane Cannstatt event, and Karawane quite literally translates into caravan in English. Not the car or the RV type of caravan, but an actual caravan of people. So it's basically a fan march, and they brought together over 10,000 people who walked together to the stadium, singing their songs and just having a good time together. This Karawane Cannstatt has become a very popular event among the Stuttgart supporters. And, the images and videos are just super incredible. You should check it out if you have a chance. And the match that followed was also a highlight of the weekend, Stuttgart versus Mainz. It ended 3-3 on aggregate. A lot of stuff happening, and I'm sure we could probably continue further. But for me, I think that was my personal fantastic moment of the week.
Yeah, Alex, I saw that too. These first 2 weeks were just incredible. Sticking with Bundesliga 1 for a second here. It's going to be a very tight league this season, and I think we're going to see many surprises. But with all these fan activities, we can tell that everyone is very excited that things are starting up again, and great openers. Where there is light, there's also dark usually. So we come to our category Clubble Trouble now, where we discuss, ongoing issues between clubs or topics that are currently brewing in the league that have potential for conflict. So let's move on to that and see what we noted for this week. Clubble Trouble. Painful to watch. Yeah, Alex, I'm going to kick this off again. And I am really wondering if Leverkusen is on the way to a crisis. So my Clubble Trouble topic for this week is Bayer 04 Leverkusen, who was unbeaten last season, as we know. Just lost one game in the Europa League, but in the Bundesliga, they managed to stay unbeaten each and every match. Now, Xabi Alonso was not very happy with his team after they gave away a 2-0 lead in the top game on Saturday night against RB Leipzig, that they ended up losing 2-3. So after 2 match days, their unbeaten season broke, and the reigning champion already conceded 5 goals in 2 matches. So they definitely have a problem in the defense. On top of that, that game in Jena for the Cup during the week was a really poor performance. They just ended up winning that game with 1-0. It was 0-0 for a long time. And, Jena, great team as well. Lots of fans, great atmosphere there. But it's a regional team at the end of the day, and they're playing against the reigning German champion. So you would imagine Leverkusen can pull up a higher win. So definitely performed under expectation in the Cup. So, we might start wondering if they're going to play an equal season compared to last year. And I actually just listened to the popular Doppelpass show on German TV, which is always on Sunday mornings. And they cover the latest news about the match days and also what's going on in the club. So the expert panel over there was also addressing that bad defense performance, and in particular the unclear roles and goals. So you have with Radetzky and Kova 2 goalies that are performing, on a similar level, and Xabi Alonso didn't really announce a designated number 1. He's talking about a number 1A and a number 1B. In my experience and in my belief, you need to have absolute clarity on that position. Communication between your defense row defensive role, and the goalie is crucial. And if you see some of these situations and how they conceded the goal, you might wonder if, that unclear role definition there on the goalie position has a impact on the performance. And at the same time, though, Leverkusen continues to aspire, for greater success. Leverkusen's CEO actually went out publicly announcing that their goal for this season is to win the Champions League. It's not completely unrealistic looking at what they pulled off last year and how that team stayed together. But I'm curious, Alex, with these two bad performances, is this an issue of the moment, or do you think Leverkusen will have a hard time competing for the second league title in a row? And, talking about the Champions League in particular, do you think they have a chance on winning that this year?
Look, frankly speaking, Leverkusen winning the Champions League is a bit far-fetched, I believe. Of course, it's great to be ambitious, but you've just won your first Bundesliga championship in your history, which is great. Congratulations. So let's make sure that you guys stay up there, and you actually need to first put out the fires within your own team, within your own club. You've mentioned the situation between the goal, and I totally agree with you. I mean, as you said, you're a goalie yourself, so you probably have a much stronger opinion on that. But I think, as you said, that the number one should be an absolute clear situation. And I remember last year there was no issue really, because Radetzky was the number one in the Bundesliga, and Kovar was the number one in the cup games, both the DFB Pokal and the Europa League, where they eventually made it to the final and then later on lost to Atalanta Bergamo. So I think you could just keep it that way. They've gotten used to it. I believe the communication between the goalie and the defense line in both competitions were just fine. So yeah, why create issues when it's not really necessary? But anyway, they're the reigning champion, and we've seen this before with other teams who were successful. And we always see it with teams who get promoted to the Bundesliga. The second year is always the more difficult one. Obviously, last year was a huge surprise. They ended up winning the title, totally deserved, fantastic football. But then also the rumors started going around. Xabi Alonso was supposed to, at least Bayern Munich wanted to sign him, not a surprise. They ended up with Vincent Kompany as their, I believe, option number 3 after multiple coaches, including Nagelsmann and Xabi Alonso, said no to them.
I think it was more 6th.
6 or 7, I don't even remember. But yeah, even though that's a different topic, so there were already some noise around the coach position. Then later on, you had the whole issue about Jonathan Tah, their captain and central defender. He was, surprise, surprise, also supposed to go to Bayern, but eventually the two clubs couldn't agree on, I believe, the fee. So he stayed at Leverkusen. Then other teams from Spain wanted to sign him, but eventually Leverkusen CEO said, no, you're going to stay with us this season until your contract runs out. Then you had another defender who played a great role last year, which was Kosunu. He went on loan, actually, which is also super surprising, on loan to Bergamo. Just a couple days ago, they then signed Mukiele from PSG as a replacement. So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of noise, even though the season has already started. But yeah, to answer your question, I think there's a potential for a crisis. But nonetheless, they lost their first match after, 35 unbeaten games or so. I think it's not a reason for them to freak out, but of course they have to keep. They need to put out the fires and just continue their good work, and then I think they're another contender for the title this year.
Right. But definitely, I think you mentioned two very valuable points. Just want to go back to the goalie situation real quick. We're also talking about playing in the Champions League this year, right? While they were dividing the roles in the Europa League and in the German Cup last season, and I think Radetzky definitely wanted to play those games as well. But now we're talking about the Champions League. You know, you're going to hear that Champions League anthem when you stand on the field, and you just want to play there. And if you feel like you're the number one, you're not going to want to sit out for the Champions League. So they definitely have to make a clear decision on that position. And the second point that you mentioned that I think that we need to watch throughout the season, you know, is the topic Xavi Alonso. This will come up again. He decided to do another season with Bayer Leverkusen. I'm pretty sure he wants to see where he can take that team in the Champions League. But I think at one point, as things move, you know, in Europe and coaches get fired or contracts don't get extended for next season, he will be on the list for top clubs again to become their coach next season. And then once a decision is made there, that might change the dynamic at Leverkusen as well.
Yeah, I agree. Let's keep an eye on Leverkusen. I think I still believe it's a really interesting team, fantastic talent. Xabi Alonso, in my view, is going to be one of the top coaches of the probably next 10 to 20 years. I'm sure he's going to make his way to the top. He has fantastic former clubs who he eventually will end up, I believe. I certainly believe that Liverpool's new coach is going to have a hard time. And, Real Madrid is Real Madrid. Anything can happen there. So I firmly believe he will end up at either one of the two after he says, or after he bids farewell to Leverkusen. But yeah, having said that, let's move on to actually my personal trouble moment of the week. And I would like to talk with you about the case of Mario Vuskovic. Mario Vuskovic, 22-year-old defender, plays for Hamburg. Very interesting and controversial case because Vuskovic actually had been suspended already since, I believe, March 2023 for doping, in fact, because after a routine test in November 22, came back positive. And allegedly, Vuskovic had used the substance EPO or EPO, which is a substance that enhances endurance and performance by boosting the production of red blood cells in the body. It's a substance that has been around in the world of sports for a number of years, and it was used most frequently in the past among other athletes like cyclists, swimmers, but also occasionally in football, so it's not completely unusual. Yeah, anyway, initially both the A and the B sample came back positive, and the German Football Association, DFB, actually suspended Vuskovic for 2 years, and that became effective in March 23. So he hasn't been playing for essentially 1.5 years already, and both Vuskovic and Hamburg's lawyers actually appealed the ruling. So they went back to the courtroom, basically. Now, just a few days ago, the CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is kind of like the highest court that deals with these type of issues in the world of sports, went on and actually extended the ban for 4 years after, as I said, both sides appealed to the ruling of the DFB. So I'm not sure if you've heard about the whole discussion, but apparently the lawyers appealed the ruling because there were some irregularities during the testing process. Apparently there were some irregularities with how the samples were handled, how they were stored, and also Vuskovic was apparently not really given the chance to give a statement why this test came out positive. So a lot of noise around that ruling. But anyway, now the decision is there. He's not going to play for at least another 2 years. And since the initial decision of the ban, the support from the club and also all the Hamburg fans was enormous. Everyone had his back. I remember they actually had a couple of banners in his support. They're waving a flag every match day, and you could actually, when you go back to last weekend's match, you see some of the Hamburg players with this flag that says "Free Vuskovic" on the pitch. But now, with again a 4-year ban, Vuskovic may actually become a bit of a reliability for the club. So his contract expires in 2025. He's a defender, great talent. He's 22 years old now. He's essentially going to miss out these crucial years of his career where you gain confidence in your abilities, where you really mature as a defender and take on a lot of responsibility. So by the time he returns to the team, he might have missed out on just a lot of playtime. I'm curious to hear your opinion on this. Do you think Hamburg should kind of keep supporting him, keep him employed, and wait for his return until 2026? Or do you believe that with this ruling, they've put essentially an end to a very short career?
Yeah, that's a very tough one, right? And I don't have enough contacts in terms of did he do it or did he not do it, and how this whole testing works. I mean, I'm absolutely against any form of doping. I'm a big sports fan outside of football as well, right? I follow the Olympics, was a big fan of the Tour de France for a long time, watched everything that had to do with sports on TV, and I always hated when these cases came out, and I have zero tolerance for doping, but obviously the team and the club is 100% behind him, so I don't know what they know that we don't know or the public doesn't know. Certainly I do believe that his career is going to be over for the reasons that you mentioned. He's not going to be able to play on top level 2 or maybe even 4 years, depending on how this whole situation settles now. So that is I think that's going to put an end to his career, to be honest, and I don't know how I would deal with it as a club manager. Again, this person probably spent his whole or sacrificed his whole childhood to become a professional soccer player. I don't know if he has any alternatives in the back end. Certainly, those are things to consider as a club. How do you support a player, especially if you believe that he is innocent? So, yeah, I don't have a straight answer to it. It's a very, very complex case. And I think Hamburg needs to do its investigations. If they believe that the player is innocent, then they should certainly support him. I think that's their responsibility. They have a responsibility for that human being, and they probably should pay him one way or the other, find a different role for him. But if the investigation shows that he is guilty, then then I think that's on him, and he has to figure out his life. I do believe everyone deserves a second chance, but I don't think there's a coming back to professional soccer on this level after 4 years, like you said, especially when you're in your prime years.
Yeah, I do agree, and I'm afraid that's probably exactly what's going to happen. But yeah, we'll see. It's a super interesting case, and again, thank you, Hamburg. It's just a club that keeps delivering content, whether they like it or not. And this is just another one of those great examples.
Absolutely, yeah. We will definitely stay tuned, and we'll take a look what's happening there in Hamburg. Let's move on into our last category, which is schedule ballers. And right out of the gate, there's not much happening next week. But regardless, we'll take a quick look at the international action. Schedule ballers. What's kicking next? Yeah, as you know, guys, the Bundesliga is pausing next week. We can only look forward to a couple of friendly games. And Alex and I both agreed on a matchup here that we think is going to be quite interesting, which is Germany against Netherlands. It's going to take place on October 10th. So it's a real classic international friendly between two neighboring countries. And a big football rivalry. Both teams are huge football nations. And I'm curious what Julian Nagelsmann newly formed team can pull off there. Who do you see as a more mature team, Alex? And how do you see the odds for Germany pulling off a win here?
Of course, as you said, Germany and Netherlands is just one of those classic fixtures. It never gets old. I think the big rivalry of the 1990s and the decades before has slowed down a little bit. So it's not, we don't hate each other anymore, especially after the Dutch fans visited Germany for the Euros this summer. And it's just a bunch of happy folks. I personally like them, so I'm very much looking forward to the match. Who do I see as the more mature team is a great question, because I think both of the teams are currently going through some sort of transformation. I think both haven't really found the right core team or the core starting 11 yet. There are a bunch of highly talented players on the Dutch side as well. First and foremost, Xavi Simons from Red Bull Leipzig. Fantastic player. Again, Bayern wanted to sign him this summer. So yeah, just a lot of quality on the pitch. I'll definitely going to watch the game, even though it's a friendly. I think it's a good way to see, okay, where's the journey going for both of these teams? What is the plan of the coach? We earlier spoke about the midfield, which is going through a huge transformation, the German midfield particularly. So, yeah, that's definitely a game to enjoy. And we should also not forget there's another friendly coming up against Hungary. Probably a smaller name in the world of football, but nonetheless, the last couple of years have shown that Hungary has done a tremendous job in terms of developing their squad. Bunch of talented players, few of them also play in the Bundesliga. So yeah, I'm gonna very much look forward to watching those two fixtures.
Certainly, yes, and we will be back next week with an episode as well, which will be slightly different, considering that all 3 German professional leagues actually will be pausing next week. The Bundesliga action will then resume the weekend after. So basically Friday the 13th of September. Hopefully that's not a bad omen for some of these clubs playing on that day. But this is where Bundesliga action is going to be back, and then our episodes, the episode that will come out on Monday, September 16th, will be one of our regular episodes again. So I hope you will continue to follow us and enjoy our podcast here. Make sure you leave us a like and sign up and subscribe to our channels. We really appreciate your support, and hope to hear you next time again.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Rick just said, you guys help us if you like the content, if you like the format of this show, hit the like button, follow our channels, leave a comment, and one way or another get in touch with us, and have a great rest of the weekend. And I'll hear you guys next week.
Thank you, Alex. Bye-bye, guys.